if I didn't have a company, I would not have any social media. The only social media that I had installed on my phone was LinkedIn. I used it primarily for cold outreach as opposed to posting and creating content. I didn't even have like TikTok installed. I'd uninstalled Instagram. I
From
didn't have
like
any social media.
nerd to creator.
But I think it was really a question of what do I need to do to grow my company.
Welcome to Taste and Tactics, where founders and go-to-market leaders share how they brought their boldest ideas to life. From concept to execution, we cover every step behind these iconic launches. Join me each week for both inspiration and actionable tips. I'm Shriya Nevatia. Let's dive in.
Hi, really excited to have you here, Ahana.
Thank you, Shriya. Really excited to chat with you today.
So today we're going to talk about your awesome product, but a really cool experiment that you did for your app Clear and your company. And so can you just start with an overview of what Clear is so that people have some context?
Yeah, of course. If your listeners haven't already downloaded Clear, they definitely should. It's a completely free skincare routine tracking app. So it works very similar to a period tracker or a diet tracker, but it's for skincare. You log the products you use, any medications if you take any, and then you take progress selfies. We analyze how your skin is changing in those pictures, accounting for many parameters like your skin type, skin concerns, skin color. And we're essentially aggregating data across tens of thousands of people in our community to make unbiased product recommendations for consumers. So really the goal is to help people to figure out which products to use in the first place and whether what they're using is actually working.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize that current evolution of it because a few years ago, I'm sure that when computer vision and AI was not nearly as good, you couldn't like analyze it to the same degree. And now you can in the past couple of years, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I think even sort of more fundamental than that, it wasn't so much just a technical challenge, but also a challenge of distribution and how do you build up that data set, even if we have the tech tools to analyze, how do you incentivize people to take pictures of their skin and share the products in their routine? And there was no market leading skincare tracker. And I think the big risk when I started the business, or the big question I suppose, was, well, why not? Is it because there
Hmm.
doesn't need to be, or is it because it hasn't been done well before? And as somebody who had suffered with my own skin issues for many, many years and tried all of the skincare apps on the App Store, I firmly believed it was the latter, that none of the existing apps were really built by people who really understood the problem. And so, my approach was not only deeply personal, but my background is in physics. I run the company like a science experiment, and every single product decision that was taken had a lot of analysis and data behind it. And so, that was kind of the thing that we had to prove. And touch wood, I feel like the company's still alive 4 years later, and we're still doing well. So yeah, I think we're on that journey to proving that there will be a market leading skincare app, and it will be called Clear.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you really you created the market and then you created something that truly didn't exist. And you are the customer.
Indeed. And
Yeah.
I've been on
Yeah.
my own skincare journey while building it as well. I think this job and being a founder in general, I'm sure it's a surprise to nobody, it can be incredibly stressful. That's one of the big triggers for your skin. And ironically, in some of the busiest company times is when my skin was the worst.
Hmm.
And so again, it's in some ways it feels horrible, especially when you're building in this space and you're still going through your own issues. But I think that did two things for me. Number one, it truly made me a user. As you said, like I properly logged all my medications. My full skin transformation is documented on the Clear app. I genuinely sought support from the community that I built, which was the most like surreal, rewarding experience ever. As awful as dealing with these skin issues are, I think having that kind of perspective on your customer is actually a huge blessing in many ways, or at least that's what I try and tell myself every time I break out now, that if I didn't have this terrible skin, I would not have this company. So I try and practice gratitude for every pimple, which is easier said than done.
That's a really funny silver lining. Okay, one thing I want to dive into because this kind of sets up the experiment that we're talking about. You have like seriously mastered founder-led social media, including my producer. A bunch of people have been like, "Oh my God, her videos are great. Oh my God, I love like following her on social." So how do you figure that out? Like, how was that the thing that worked? Had you done it before? Was it awkward at first? Share a little bit about that before we like dive in.
Yeah, so to answer the question of had I done it before, no, I had done none of anything before. I came into this founder journey with this blind belief that I can do anything and I'm just going to try everything. That said, I'm also the kind of person that really hedges my risk. So I always have a plan of like, if I'm terrible at this new task that I've never done before, what is the backup plan to make sure that, I'm giving the company the best chance of success?
Hmm.
So when it came to social media, to be really honest with you, I like from a purely personal perspective, do not like it. If I didn't have a company, I would not have any social media. The only social media that I had installed on my phone was LinkedIn during university. And that was because I was doing a lot of finance internships, had to get her coffee chats somehow. So I used it primarily for cold outreach as opposed to posting and creating content. I didn't even have like TikTok installed. I'd uninstalled Instagram. I
From
didn't have
like
any social media.
nerd to creator.
But I think it was really a question of what do I need to do to grow my company. And one of the things I struggled with, especially being perhaps a younger founder, also not very plugged into the Silicon Valley ecosystem. I'm based in the UK. And I was really thrust upon, this opportunity was presented to me very quickly because Y Combinator were the first investors, but they invested while I was still studying, which meant that I literally went overnight from student doing a physics master's to founder of this YC backed company, which is amazing and like the coolest opportunity ever. But it meant I had zero network and no one I
Mm,
could really rely on, which was a business problem, especially when it came to founders and investors, because I wanted to learn from other founders, which YC was pretty good at doing because I was in an amazing cohort. But particularly on the investor front, I didn't know how relationship it was, how network driven it was. And I saw that as a very legitimate business problem of investors are not taking meetings with me. They're not
mm-hmm,
responding to my
mm-hmm.
messages. What can I do to get in front of them? And so I just thought, well, I need to try and stand out somehow. I'm not in San Francisco. Even if I was, it was during COVID. So I purely viewed it as a business problem. I do not have visibility in front of investors. What can I do to build that? And at that point, I was already writing out very frequent updates. Every week, I was planning the goals and milestones for my company. I thought, why don't I just document this?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I just post about it on LinkedIn and see if people are interested? And of course, there's a cringe factor when you start. And of course, there's the question of, is anybody going to read this? But I think I always just tried to be as authentic as I could and just imagine that like this is just for the YC partners. When they ask what my weekly update is, almost word for word, I'm just going to post that on LinkedIn. I also
Mm.
simultaneously at that point started a YouTube channel again, just because I didn't know what would work and what wouldn't. But for my monthly updates, I thought let me just try and film that in a video again. Don't know if anyone's going to watch, but let me just document this because I've already done the hard work to do the work and then write out what I've done. Let me just try filming it on a video. But before, I'd never done any like talking to camera kind of stuff before I started my company, but I just sort of like almost fearlessly jumped into it. And I said, if it doesn't work, I just stop. Like there's nothing lost. I really just kept doing that very, very consistently. I never obsessed about the numbers. I knew that this was a long game type thing. And as with most things in life, doing it consistently, reasonably well is better than doing it very good once and then never again. So I think consistency's always been sort of one of my superpowers. So I just kept on and on posting these updates. I said 3 times a week I'm going to post on LinkedIn, and I still just post 3 times a week on LinkedIn about whatever I'm doing, and that's been a fantastic way to grow my network. And simultaneously now for short form video, that was only about a year ago that I started even thinking about that. And all my content previously was focused on sort of founder content of like what is
Mm-hmm.
it like to be a founder, lessons I've learned, etc. My short form video was very different because that was very much on the consumer marketing side. So I'm not trying to reach investors and founders. I'm trying to reach skincare enthusiasts now. So this narrative of I'm a YC backed founder, blah, blah, blah. Your skincare consumer doesn't firstly know what YC is and they don't
Yeah.
care, even if they
Yeah.
did. So again, it was just a pure business challenge. I am a Gen Z, but I didn't even have TikTok installed on my phone. I got the app. I felt a bit like a grandma, to be really honest, but I was just like, I'm just going to try. And again, if this doesn't work, here's my contingency plan. I'll speak to some younger people that maybe do use it more. I'll try and get feedback from founders that I admire who've done it well. But I'm just going to think about who's my target audience? It's skincare enthusiasts. What is the persona? What is the narrative I need to tell? And with my founder content, I'm very clear, on if there are 3 things people want to take away about me, it's maybe I studied physics, I went through YC, and my company's called Clear, which is a beauty tech company. And that's the story I tell over and over and over again. So I thought for the app, And for my consumer, what is that story? And I experimented
Mm-hmm.
with a bunch of different things. And ultimately, again, after crazy consistency, and for short form video, that was 3 videos a day for
Oh my
a
God.
year.
Yeah, crazy.
I found that the story is I am a girl who had acne and I know how to code. And so I built a skincare app that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that that's sort of like the very simplistic version of the story that worked well. And that's a story I tell over and over and over again. But I'd say there's really no magic pill to it. It's just a mixture of experimenting, not being too obsessed about the data early on because it will be bad no matter what. I think. Like I think you can get a viral video earlier or a viral post, but it's unlikely and it's also not a good long-term sustainable strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as early days you're willing to be consistent, resilient, disciplined with the posting, and then once you have enough data and you've run enough experiments to actually start analyzing the performance is when you can start to optimize. But that's it. Like I'm not a social media person, wouldn't use it if I didn't have to for my business. But at the same time, I think it's a really cool area that I get to learn in. And I'm really grateful for the fact that, some days I am writing code, other days I'm talking to investors, and now I get to film. It's reduced from 3 to 2, but 2 TikToks every day talking about my skin.
It's a lot, man. It's really funny that you still consider yourself not a social media person. Just to emphasize the level of success you've had with this technique before we talk about how you applied it to this initiative. Like, which platform do you have the largest number of followers on? How many followers is it? You or Clear?
Oh my gosh, I hate this question, Shreya. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's LinkedIn. I think it's like 24,000, nearly 25,000.
People are listening.
The views on TikTok are crazy though. Like I think
Yeah.
I've had around like 3 million views. One weird moment was when I went to my boyfriend's hometown and one of his school friends that like I'd never connected with digitally was like, I love your skincare routine. And I was like, oh, you downloaded Clear. Because I knew she knew about like me from this. She was like, no, the TikTok you made yesterday. It came up on my
Yesterday.
for you page. And I was like, what? Like the fact that it wasn't that she was following me, but it actually was like reaching my target customer was such a strange feeling. But there's also this sense of fear when people are like, I love your content. And then I'm wondering like which one, because also my LinkedIn persona is very different from my TikTok persona. They're both me, but they're very different sides of my personality. And like one is a deeply personal skin journey where I'm showing my like skin without makeup and how bad it was and like what I did to change that. And the other is all about like me as a founder. So I always find it very funny of like, I wonder which side of me they've seen and on what they're
Yeah.
basing their expectations. But it's all part of the job and it's fun. So I'm happy to do it.
Totally. Okay, so let's jump into the like initiative that we wanted to talk about today. So obviously you've gone through this creator journey, you've learned tons, you've had a lot of output, a lot of consistency, a lot of trial and error. So tell us more about what you did and what your goals for it were.
Yeah. So this was an interesting initiative that took place earlier this year. And it was based off of this premise of the short form video content and growing Clear's user base. We have not invested any money into growing our user base. And the reason for that was a very sort of specific business reason that all of our sales thus far had come strictly from B2B. And the way that we monetize on the B2B front is through essentially claims testing and getting UGC before and after pictures, product reviews for brands in a really unbiased, nicely structured way. And so that's great. It's super innovative, it's super exciting. But the downside is it is not clear what our revenue per user is or our
Mm-hmm.
LTV is. And so that makes it then very difficult to attribute a marketing cost. How do you know how much to spend to acquire a user if you don't know what the user is worth? And for that reason, one of the big milestones that we achieved recently was launching a premium tier where we have now started monetizing on the consumer front, and we will have a number for that very soon as sort of the data balances out a little bit. But I thought, okay, in the meantime, before we're ready to start spending on marketing, I want to have figured out what works and what is a scalable strategy such that as soon as we have that budget in mind, we turn this on and we grow the hell out of this business.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I said, I hedge my risks like crazy and I'm a planner kind of person. And so I spent almost all of last year, or maybe from like around April to December, making these 3 TikToks a day. And I was very strict about it because it's a lot and that can easily be someone's full-time job. But I said they're going to be low production quality, just me filming on my phone, in my bedroom, whatever. I'll try different content strategies, but I'm allocating no more than 15 minutes to each video every day. And that includes
That's great.
ideation through to filming, through to editing, through to posting. And I cross post as well on TikTok, Instagram, Reels, and YouTube Shorts. Given I
Mm-hmm.
have the accounts, why not? So I'd been doing this for about 8 months last year. And by the time I got to December, I'd kind of figured out what storyline resonated, the one I told you just before. And so I thought, okay, like this is great. There is only one of me, and there's a limit to how much content that I can make. Is this a scalable strategy? Is this something where we can get more people? And also, just in terms of what Clear stands for, Clear is not just acne. Clear is any skin concern, skin type. Acne is not the only skin concern that people go through. And secondly, it's all about community. It's all about the data that's coming, that's crowdsourced in a way. And so that's so core to our product. And I didn't want our social media to look like this is just me, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, there's tens of thousands of people sharing what they're doing. And so I wanted that to be more evident from the social media platforms. But as I said, still no budget, right? Like, still, before we've launched this premium tier, how can I possibly justify a marketing budget? So I thought, well, how can I try and incentivize people to share their skin stories in the same way that I do
Mm-hmm.
on a TikTok page without money? So that was the business challenge, if you will. And then, over the years, I've engaged a lot with students, especially at universities. We run insight programs and internships every single summer, just because separately, I'm very passionate about young people in entrepreneurship and sort of debunking things and showing people that it can actually be a viable career path. And there are some steps that you can take to get an idea off the ground. And so I've been fortunate to have interacted with a lot of students, especially over the last couple of years. And I'd noticed that a lot of people are interested in building a personal brand, in
Mm-hmm.
creating video content, but have the same budgetary restrictions of like they can't afford to pay an agency, or they don't want to pay an agency, or outsource, but they equally don't quite have the skills to do it themselves and just get it off the ground and just blindly go for it. And so I realized that there was perhaps this little gap in the market, if you will, where I realized that there are students, a lot of whom are aspiring founders who want to one day start their own businesses, who want to use personal brand and social media to help grow their companies, but they don't know where to start. And so I realized that through my own experiments, I've had a lot of learnings about how to do this. And if in exchange for those learnings, they can experiment with creating skincare type content, then it's a win-win, because they will get the learnings that they need to kind of start their careers in their companies. And on my end, I get to test this hypothesis of, uh, is this a scalable marketing strategy? Can other people sharing their skin stories on fresh TikTok accounts work? So that was kind of the rationale. I was chatting about it very casually one day of like, maybe this could work. And then the next day the LinkedIn post was live and the recruitment started. So I really wasted no time in just thinking like, you know what, I've had this idea. Let's see if it works.
Yeah, and I'm sure you also, the second you have some success on social media, people start reaching out to you and being like, "Can you teach me to be a creator? How'd you edit this? What advice do you have?" And this was a way to be like, okay, let me like teach a bunch of people at once and bring it back to help the business rather than just like feel guilty about taking a bunch of calls with friends who are looking for the same advice I repeat over and over.
Absolutely, yeah. And
Yeah.
that is one of the challenges I have, especially with the LinkedIn community, is that, yeah, but because all of my content is around what it's like to be a founder. And as a founder, you have to ask, like, you have to DM people, you have to ask the questions. And I do try and answer where I can, but sometimes that, like, it's not possible. My LinkedIn DMs would be a full-time job in itself, and I try and
Yeah.
block quite a substantial amount of time to getting through as much as I can. But absolutely, it was the fact that you're right. I do get a lot of the same questions. So I thought, let me put it into a structured accelerator program where people can be with me for this 6-week period, actually learn about what they have to do, learn from the basics. And the other thing is, over the years, I've connected with various content creators, mostly just for me to learn, actually. For me to ask about like what did they do, like how did it go for them, and in the hopes that one day also like most of them were users and are users of Clear, and they were happy to talk about the company as and when that would be helpful for us. And so I realized that, again, I'm very fortunate to have these relationships, and these are all really lovely people, friends of mine, and equally passionate about education. And so by providing access to them via this program to people that want to get started as a creator, again, it's a win-win. It's a chance for these creators to give back. And it's a chance for the aspiring creators and founders to also learn from the experts beyond just me, because I wouldn't call myself an expert. I just call myself a very disciplined enthusiast.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that you have certainly more expertise than many others, which is why they've reached out to you. But it's hard to self-define as an expert because the more you learn, the more you know there's way more to learn.
Yeah.
So one thing that's interesting is you launched this on LinkedIn, but you have very different audiences on the different platforms. And I think you mentioned to me before that you did want them to make content about skincare, but that potentially didn't work out that well because your LinkedIn audience is a lot of founder types and students who are ambitious and want to ask you about business. And then your other social platforms, which they were making the content for, but they weren't necessarily the followers on initially, are about skincare. How do you look back on that? What do you think of that decision and who ended up in it?
Yeah, so uh, I debated this about who I advertise this to. Do I do it with TikTok audience or do I do it with LinkedIn audience? I ended up choosing the LinkedIn audience just because I felt that to get the most out of the program, both for them and for me, adherence was the most important thing. And
Mm,
because people view LinkedIn as a professional platform, whereas TikTok is a just for fun kind of thing, that it would be hard to build structure and like sort of make a program or a career opportunity through TikTok. I was very skeptical that people would take it seriously if that's how it's been advertised, because also people do not follow me on TikTok for career advice or anything career related. It's purely for skin content.
hmm
And so I thought that what I could do instead is I knew that I would get a pretty good mass of applicants, so I could afford to be a bit more selective with the criteria of who ends up making it to the program. And because of that, part of the application criteria was around having a skin story to tell. And
hmm
candidates were rejected if they didn't have any skin journey, because even if, they were a great aspiring founder and a great person very keen to engage with a program, I needed there to be some level of authenticity and some story to share, to put it quite frankly. I wasn't requiring the same level of enthusiasm and personal connection that I have with my skin journey, but they had to have something to say about their skin. And so the way I ran the recruitment process was partly asking them beyond, the standard like career-esque questions or about what their company does or what their hopes are for the future. I asked them to share their skin story in a video on the
hmm
application itself, not just to see can this person talk about their skin, but can they make a video also. And I think that was a great decision because it definitely helped me whittle down candidates, and only people who had something to say about skin were selected for the program. And so, I think that was good actually. The bigger challenge I actually think was the thing that I was worried about from the TikTok audience, which was the adherence. And I think I perhaps underestimated the level of discipline required to make 2 TikToks a day. I think one of my superpowers is discipline and consistency. And I was like, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
In theory.
I, yes, in theory, in practice, I learned that it was a little bit different.
Definitely. And one thing we haven't necessarily touched on yet that I think is useful to know for the rest of the tactics that we talk about is that like macro level, you said that it didn't really live up to your expectations, right? Like when you look back on it, how do you macro reflect on it?
Yeah, I think, from a purely like personal connection, enjoyment perspective, it was a lot of fun. Like I met some really cool people and it was really lovely actually to see the community that they formed with each other, everyone that was on the program. It was also the first in-person thing that we did, which was like another part of this experiment. Clear is a fully remote company. Everyone's always banging on about in-person being better, blah, blah, blah. And I don't like to be closed-minded, even though I'm pretty sure that remote works best for us. I was like, let me use this as another experiment of like mandating it to be in person, people in London getting together. That was really beautiful to see them like come together and, they go out for lunch afterwards. It was really nice. What did not go as per plan was just more the outcome as far as what it meant for conversion. The whole rationale behind it was to see if this was a scalable strategy. And I don't felt that I quite got an answer. It's not even that I discovered it was not a scalable strategy. It's more that the critical mass of content required to have data on that to make a good decision was not enough, because I underestimated how hard it would be for people to make these 2 videos a day,
hmm
especially given my management style. I am proudly a non-micromanager, and I only like to bring people onto the Clear team who are very high trust, high motivation, do not need chasing, which I suppose is a slightly harder thing to implement in a program like this, where it's not a full-time commitment, there's no monetary commitment, it's just sort of the promise of education in exchange for making these videos, which was, I have to say, it was tough because it required a lot of my time. I would curate sessions talking about all the strategies that I used. It involved a lot of operations and logistics, make the room bookings, get the speakers in, etc. So it was a non-trivial time investment on my part, and the nature of the projects were that everyone had to create a new account from scratch. It had to be like a skin branded thing. They shouldn't have leveraged their existing personal branding. That was the whole point. Just like I started from scratch on TikTok, I wanted them to learn from scratch as well. But in order to even really like have your videos surface, I suppose the barrier to entry for short form video is so low that anyone can just make an account, anyone can just make 1 or 2 videos. So you'll only start seeing results if you're willing to push through that initial discomfort. And I think that was the challenge that, some people really overthought that first video. There was a lot of friction and fear about making that first video because it is terrifying talking to a camera for the first time. I totally appreciate that. And so it was sort of like procrastination before that first video. And then when the first video doesn't do well, it's sort of like a double whammy of rejection, which I
Mm-hmm.
actually think is a great lesson as a founder because most of your life is rejection in every different facet. So I think it sets you up well for expectations as you build your company. But I totally appreciate that that's not a motivating thing to see, that you've like really hyped yourself up, made this video, and then it doesn't get the reception that you were expecting. It can then be even harder to go and film that second video. And this is what I tried to encourage them is like, don't obsess so much over the numbers. Don't obsess over the output. Focus on what's within your control, which is you just make the videos, right? Like you're not being judged on this. There's no leaderboard of who's performing better or worse. We're going to come together every week and discuss what's worked well for people. But there's no like, which we're not going to name and shame. And there's no like ranking of everyone's
Yours
grade or
sucked.
anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Why
like
did you
that.
submit such a bad video? Yeah.
Exactly. There was nothing of that sort. And so, yeah, I created a safe space and all the rest. And of course, I was also leading by example. I was also posting my 2 videos a day as well. And not every one of my videos does well. And I was very clear on, sharing some of my failures on my content journey too. And so I think it was that it was actually very hard to get everybody to consistently post the 2 videos per day that I asked for. Perhaps that was the request that was either overly ambitious, or for making a requirement like that some people would consider ambitious, perhaps you need a tighter style of management or like bigger consequences. I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm a very relaxed leader as far as if people stop putting in the effort, I lose interest in managing. And I'm like, okay, stop the program then. Like I'd rather you didn't
Yeah.
continue. I'm not going to chase you. I'd rather not. So I think perhaps it was sort of a mix of the way I run the company, what our culture is like, my leadership style, combined with the fact that I underestimated the discipline required on the participants point, which is definitely something that I now, a positive was it taught me about what to screen for in hiring in the future. And now discipline is one of the major factors because I realized like I have such a high trust environment that it requires people to want to learn and do things on their own accord really without me telling them to, and so I think that was a really valuable learning from the whole experiment, um as well. And I suppose it was also a nice reminder that like, wow, like what I achieved was not trivial. Like it is hard to get views on videos. So yeah, like I don't regret doing it because I learned a lot from it. But was the outcome, as far as getting loads of downloads for my app from all these people's videos, the outcome? No, it was not the outcome.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it wasn't perhaps the thing that you might have like hypothesized would be the issue, which is, okay, what if I release all these videos from the people in the program and they just don't get that many views, and so there isn't a bump. It was something before that. There was actually like a dependency, like, oh my God, they have to stick to that volume of videos. One thing that I think might have been a confounding factor is like when people do a formal course, like they're trying to get a degree, they're in school, there's real consequences to like not hitting the homework, as you said. But a lot of the reason that people sign up for like a side course or an online thing or a fun thing or a club is because they're not great at accountability themselves.
Yeah.
Take a course to start, you just started posting. I'm someone who needs a lot of accountability, and so I'll sign up for these online courses because I want it, and then I won't stick with a lot of them
Yeah.
because, like, I think you're drawn to it if you're not very good at accountability to begin with because you're like,
Yeah.
I need a course. I need someone to tell me what to do. I can't just do this myself. I'm
Yeah.
scared.
There's there's definitely a bit of an unfortunate selection bias. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that could be mitigated, honestly, by making it something like a paid program,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
something that I was against for the first one for two reasons. Number one, I didn't know what the uptake was going to be like, to be really vulnerable. Like, I didn't know if anyone was going to sign up. And now I
totally.
realized how many people were interested. I've realized I could have definitely made it paid. And again, not so much from like a let's make loads of money off of people. The other reason I didn't want to make it paid was to make it as accessible for everyone. And I knew a lot of people were students. Students famously do not have lots of money to spend. So I felt that no, like let me keep it purely educational, but maybe just like a token investment, like even like a fiver, like something really nominal, just to have that like sunk cost of like, okay, I have spent something on this.
Yeah.
I may as well engage with it fully and do what she's telling me to do. Maybe psychologically it would have a difference. I think if I ran it again, that would be something I'd experiment with.
Yeah, and that's the next thing I'm curious about. Like, do you think you'd run this again with a lot of tweaks and changes, or are you more interested in kind of applying the learnings to other tactics you're using?
I think it's perhaps more the latter. Also, just because I haven't had the time to like fully decompress and like think about running it again. If I did, there would 100% be a lot of changes. I wouldn't be able to justify the time investment I put into this with the outcome. So it definitely couldn't look like it did exactly. But for some things that were already in the works, for example, our summer internship program that happened, well, that's currently happening timeline wise, we are now after the content marketing accelerator. I implemented a lot of the learning. So, as I said, when it came to screening for discipline, when it came to asking for videos, that was something that I'd never done before. But for my, especially social media interns this year, they've been the best I think I've ever had.
Mm.
And I think especially having that like little preview in their application itself where they had to talk, another big challenge these days with LLMs, ChatGPT, etc., is when people are applying for opportunities, everyone is heavily reliant on them. So adding a video element of screening to that where they have to record, especially like a social media-esque type of video, is a really helpful way of gauging like will they be good at this or will this look like a hostage video, which we have had in the past with some of our interns, and it's not the best look for the company.
I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like the extra effort, which is the painful part, is the point. Like, I've had a job interview a few months ago where the first round, it was a very competitive, popular company. And so
Hmm.
the first round was a video. And I decided I had to say, like, well, how much do I want this? Because I know that's going to be a pain. And then I had to, like, dress up, change my background, write a script, and then record 15 practice takes. Like, it took so long, but in the end, I got through the next round. I was really happy with it. I was so proud of it. I like sent it to my husband and mom. Part of why like you add the video is because you're like, this is really going to filter for people who care and
Yeah.
want this really badly instead of just someone who like burps out a ChatGPT nonsense about themselves. Why do you like this company? I think this company is wonderful because of 3 things from their website that I didn't
Yeah.
even look at.
Exactly. And I mean, another very practical learning was also, every year I have interns that work in marketing. And even in previous years, actually, like I had given them full freedom. I was like, just make 2 videos a day. And I've now learned that like almost nobody makes 2 TikToks a day. To be even as compared to all of the creators I brought in to give talks, my levels of consistency were way higher. So I think I
Mhm.
am potentially the outlier as far as that goes. But so instead, like that's not a project this year for my marketing interns. Instead, it was focused on different content styles, which are higher quality. What I mean by that, mine are very low production quality in the sense of it's just talking to a camera. So this year we've experimented more with content styles that take more time to put together, such as street interviews about skincare. That's something I've
Mm.
always wanted to do, where you can't make 2 of those a day because it requires a lot more investment to make, but it's still an experiment that we haven't run before. And so this year, if you look on our social media now, the content coming out over the summer is also quite different to what we've had previous summers. And every summer before, it's sort of been a repetition of the same thing of like, people making videos here and there, but it's not really moving the needle. Whereas this year, like I think even the first street interview got literally 10 times the like the reach of all of the other content from previous years. So again, like I wouldn't have had that learning. I would have just made them do the same thing probably again this year and wondered like why it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so I again, I don't regret it, but would I do it again in the same way? No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the core of getting distribution is about experimentation. Like everything isn't going to work, but you've learned so much from this and then incorporate the things that worked and cut the things that didn't. I think that's really useful. You were like, I can't get interns to do everything. They have limited time. Let me like get them to do things that I think could be other cool experiments rather than like wasting time with one that now I kind of have enough evidence to say like it doesn't work at all or it's not working right now. Let me just
Yeah.
like set this aside. One thing I'm really interested in learning about is I love running these communities and education programs myself. And I know that there's probably like listeners and people out there who want to run those as part of their product or business, but it is a huge time investment to do it well. So can you think of like, in what situations would this maybe work better? Like, why do you think that perhaps the people in it or the structure of it or who it attracted didn't translate into downloads? And so like, what kind of product or group might it work better for?
I think honestly it's all about aligning incentives. I think that's the most important thing, and having consequences. As you said, there has to be a clearer consequence for not doing something, and whether that
Mm-hmm.
is you've wasted money so through that investment or token investment. So making it a paid program I think is definitely one option that could generally work across the board, but I think it also depends perhaps on who you're engaging with. If somehow you're screening for people with very high levels of discipline or people who are already creators on one platform looking to branch out into another, that's something that I could have done a better job of. Is people found my post through LinkedIn, I should have looked at their LinkedIns. Are they posting
Yeah,
regularly on
yeah.
LinkedIn? Right, because that's a pretty good indicator if they're going to post regularly on another platform or not. So if it was purely marketing focused, looking at have they had success in a similar vein somehow, or demonstrated kind of the underlying skills needed in a slightly different way. I think there are also potentially some sectors that would be easier to talk about because skincare, I mean, everyone hopefully has a skincare routine, but I appreciate it's a deeply personal thing for some people, and it's not always the easiest thing to open up and be vulnerable about. And I think there was that added layer on our program that it's not just sharing anything, it's like a very personal thing. So perhaps if you broaden the mandate and make it easier to talk about something, or you play more to the strengths of the people on the program,
Hmm.
that can help. Obviously, the challenge there is you have to still make sure it's benefiting your company because you have to be able to justify why you're putting that time investment into it. And so I think if you can find a way to do both, or if you have a more sort of, I don't like using the word niche because I really don't believe that skincare is a niche, but something that, yeah, let's put someone else down. Let's call them boring products. If you have like a B2B SaaS product that's like not, it's not going to attract an enthusiast, but every company relies on, like any
Mm-hmm.
company with
Mm-hmm.
developers needs, like maybe then if you've got a bunch of like people that you found through LinkedIn to talk about this tool, or like it's a productivity tool, that doesn't need to be boring. So, it's like it's a productivity tool. I'm a startup founder. It's easier. It comes more naturally to talk about this thing because I would actually use it. Like maybe I'm the kind of person that would actually make a LinkedIn post about how great this like productivity hack is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can find a way to align your product and your offering with the people that you're finding, that might be better. Part of me does wonder what would have happened had I tried recruiting more through TikTok. I
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Like, you got the skincare enthusiast instead of getting
mm.
the founder type people, but then seems like you'd have to really screen to find people at an intersection.
Exactly. That's the challenge. Like even with people who had applied to this from like an educational perspective, if getting them to meet the posting requirements was this hard, having people who are on the platform for fun to meet those requirements is also really hard. And it is something that we hadn't tried to this extent, but we've had ambassador programs at Clear in the past where we recruited from our user base, which was kind of a similar thing because these are skincare enthusiasts. They've actually already downloaded the app without me, forcing them to. Like they found us organically, they use it. We want them to talk about it. And even with that, like getting people to post consistently, even though it's fun for them and more of a passion. That's kind of the problem, that it's a passion, it's not a job. And I wanted people to view this like a job because that's the mindset that I've had. Yes, skincare is kind of a passion, but it's also a job. And for me, the bigger driver factor is that it's my job to do. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, again, if I had infinite free time, I wouldn't be making TikToks about my skin. I wouldn't be posting LinkedIn content about my work, but I do it because it's my work and I take it seriously. So I thought that like that's why LinkedIn would be a better hunting ground. The results spoke for themselves. I was
I think
wrong.
it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, people are consistent about different things too. Someone can be really
Yeah.
like consistent about their workouts, but then like not really care about their job. And so maybe if you recruit from TikTok, you'd have people who were like really excited to be creators and had been trying for months and had
Yeah.
30, 40, 50 attempts, but then they wanted
Hmm.
to get something like this to be more disciplined, consistent, high quality.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's definitely something that when I reflect on if I do it again, I think I would try and recruit from TikTok, but not just anyone, but rather exactly just like micro influencers, people
Yeah.
who've just
Yeah.
started, who've proven sort of that consistency, but for whatever reason aren't seeing results. I think that would be a much better group to sample from than what I've done currently. And I think the other challenge is that the program was only 6 weeks. Even with the most consistent, disciplined person, 6 weeks is not a long time horizon to start seeing results when you start an account from zero.
Mm-hmm.
And so also having perhaps not having that as a requirement and having people who already have some sort of like micro influencer skincare presence, that they've already established their niche and it's not a fresh account, just from a pure algorithm perspective, I think would have also been a lot more successful as far as the recruitment for this goes. Yeah, maybe I'll try
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
next.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so we are unfortunately out of time, but I'd love to ask you our kind of final wrap up question, which is how do you define good taste for a product or brand? What does that word taste mean to you?
It's funny because every UX meeting I have with our UX designer, I'm shamed for my design taste.
Oh no.
I have the worst aesthetic taste, and I'm so grateful to have had her from day one on my team, making sure that I make no design decisions. I
Hire
always like,
people that are smarter than you. You're
honestly,
like, oh,
the thing is, like, I don't have fear about sharing things, but like I do share them quite sheepishly. Of like, I know this is probably a ridiculous design suggestion, and 9 out of 10 times it's met with, yeah, that would look really bad. So I don't think I have the best taste as far as that goes. But I think in a more broad sense, it kind of comes down to values. If we remove like the pure aesthetic version of it, but when it's, in the context of product or marketing, it's about what your company stands for, and especially when you're a small company, it's kind of about what you stand for and what you want the company to stand for. I've been very intentional about what Clear's values are actually from day one, and it felt like a really corporate exercise to be like, these are my company core values. And I would never dream of posting them on our website like all the big corporates do, but we had them from very early on,
mm-hmm,
because from everything from like screening hires, like to finding, the first hire, I had to establish like what was important to us. And so I think, again, as far as taste goes, it's living true to those. So for example, like one of the values we have at Clear is transparency. Like, but what does that mean? That means that transparency shines through everything. Like, our name is literally Clear. It means that my leadership style is very transparent. Not every CEO would do this, but my whole team knows our exact runway. They know how much money's in the bank account. They know when things are going well. They know when things are going not well. And I totally get why some founders wouldn't want that level of transparency in their companies, but I'm radically transparent. That's how I like to operate, and that's what my team expects of me, and how we operate with each other as well. That means from a communication and a design perspective, it's about being super clear and easy to understand how to use the product. Like what the app does in our communications. It's minimal in our designs. It's also a bit more minimal as well. Thank God for Monica, our UX designer. Thanks to her. So yeah, I think like again, taste is like by definition subjective. And so it will be different for everyone. What one person will like will be different from somebody else. But so long as you are consistent to your values and authentic to, your company and sort of by extension I think that's good taste.
yeah, I love that. That's a really great way to like tying it back to values. All of the decisions that you make they collectively are your taste. They collectively come through in your values and the like every little thing you decide or create or do as part of your business.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
taste is
yeah.
just being true to yourself, being authentic and also like consistent in that messaging as well, not chopping and changing too much. And yeah, just really being true to who you are. And I think you'll also build up quite an intuitive sense of that as the company progresses, as you learn new things as well. It's not always like a super measured decision of like, oh, we have a value of transparency, so let me like change the text copy on our website. I think it's just more about like that is how I actually operate on a day-to-day basis. I spend all my time engaging with my community. I know what sort of messaging resonates, and you build that intuition with all the, I don't think intuition is just a feeling. I think it is all of the data points that you've accumulated over however long you've spent studying this market that you're operating in, and just sort of like bringing that to life.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining, and really excited to have learned from you. Love all of these insights. And so have an amazing day. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's fun to chat.
Thanks so much to Ahana for joining us. I thought that episode was really interesting. I loved some of the 3 key things that we learned. So the first one, I love this line where she said, as with most things in life, doing it consistently, reasonably well is better than doing it very good once and then never again. The fact that she made 3 videos a day for a year, amazing discipline, and especially that they were just in 45 minutes with 15 minutes each from concept, recording, execution, and editing. Just awesome. And really, if you're looking to get into social media, think of it as a long-term investment. Don't obsess over the numbers and stats because they're not going to be good at the beginning. You're starting from scratch. People have to discover and find you. The second thing that I thought was really interesting is where she reflected back on this experiment that overall didn't work. It didn't lead to the downloads and the growth in the social media following that she hoped for, but she utilized those learnings from this course for her other initiatives. So I love that when she took some of the things that she learned for the summer internship, she changed her internship application from purely written to include a social media video. So she could see which people would take the time and investment to create a video and what the quality would be. And that way, she was able to have some summer interns who made social media content that was even better and more elaborate than what she was creating herself. The third thing that I thought was really fascinating is when we talked about okay, if you want to use a educational course or community to grow your own product and your own startup, how might you do that? And I liked that she said, okay, she would look back and make sure that there was a stronger correlation between her customers and the people who are in the course. And so rather than get people who are really into startups from her LinkedIn following and only kind of into skincare, she might look on TikTok and make sure that there were people who are really into skincare, but then to select for that consistency, maybe make it paid or make sure that they were already posting consistently on another social media platform so that they were used to that rhythm of consistently putting out content. Thanks again to Ahana. This was really great.
Taste and Tactics is available on every major podcast platform and at Taste and Tactics on LinkedIn, X, TikTok, and Instagram. Thank you to our producer, Simran Honda. See you next week.